Welcome to Wild Spirits Outdoors, the place for real hunting talk, tactics, and a few laughs. Now let's dive in with your host, Brad Dijon.
Hey guys and gals, welcome back once again to episode 24. This is part 2 of my two-part podcast with Mr. Jordan Hoover, Chairman of the Upper Peninsula Deer Advisory Team. If you listened to last week's episode, we were going to take a break. I had to take a piss, so we took a break, and I was going to run this whole thing as one really long episode, but the piss break kind of came at the perfect time. It was about halfway through, and I felt, man, if we can break this into two, I think people will take more out of it, and will, maybe be a little more engaged versus trying to sit there listening to us talk for 5 straight hours. So I elected to break this up into a 2-part series. If you have not already listened to part 1 of this, I highly encourage you, before listening to this episode, go back to last week's episode, listen to that one, and then follow up with this one. Jordan, again, I appreciate you, man, for keeping the energy going, because when we hit about 11:30 p.m., I was getting tired, man, and I hope it doesn't show. The conversation was still great. I was just fading. It's been a long week. It was a long Saturday morning, and then going from 7 p.m. till way past my bedtime, I was definitely getting tired. But I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Once again, Jordan, and I've said it, I don't know, a million times already, but thank you so much for the great conversation. You're a salt of the earth guy, I can already tell that, and I look forward to an opportunity to have some more upcoming conversations with you. So without further ado, guys, I am going to flip it on over to the recording, and we will pick this up in part 2 and take it to its completion. We'll talk to you after the episode. Like I said, man, I'm hopeful, because as much as I love going to Ohio and chasing deer, and Indiana and chasing deer, I want to remember a time, like, I always remember my dad talking about, like, coming here from Kentucky, from Ohio, from Indiana to chase deer in Michigan. And now when you talk to somebody in Ohio and they're like, oh, I'm from Michigan, they're like, oh, no wonder you're here chasing deer on public land in hopes of shooting a 130-inch deer, So,
and by the way, would you go home, please?
yeah, and get out of here. You're screwing my hunt up. So,
Right. We were talking about kind of the cross reference there with football and the culture change, and I'm gonna pour some more gas on the fire here. What we have with Michigan Deer Management is a losing football program. I'll say it.
sure.
We got a losing football program. Well, how did you say that? Well, let's talk about metrics of herd health. What's a healthy herd? It's a herd that's within the carrying capacity of the land, which by and large, many portions of Michigan are not, for one reason or another. It's balanced sex ratios, which by and large, many portions of the state of Michigan are not. And it's a diverse age class of deer, which by and large, many portions of the state of Michigan are not. So
Well,
by what metric are we successful?
sure. While you're on that, because I don't know, I haven't even looked, but if I had to guess, I would say that, and if you don't know, that's fine too, but if I had to guess, I would say the average age class statewide for Michigan for any deer, regardless of sex, is 3.5 years old. Is that accurate? That's taking does and bucks into account.
So to my knowledge, we don't even track that anymore.
Okay. I was just
That
curious.
speaks for itself, in my opinion.
Yeah. My gut tells me the average buck age class is 2.5, and the average doe is 4.5, which brings us to an overall population age class of 3.5. And I could be way off base. That's just kind of what I would estimate it to be.
No, I would say that's probably reasonably accurate. I would say the vast majority of Michigan bucks will never see their 3rd birthday.
Which is when they get so fun, guys. Like for the Brown It's Down crowd, and I'm not dogging on you. If that's your game and you love that, an OBR is not going to stop you from doing that. An APR will, an OBR will not. But when a buck hits 3.5 years of age, there is a psychological and a physiological change in that deer that makes that deer special. and they just get better from 3.5 up until about 6.5, and then they start to get lazy, and they don't become 2.5-year-olds again where they're just dumb and horny all the time. They kind of just get lazy and they don't want to move very far. But there's a very special 3 years in the age of a whitetail buck where they just change and they become that thing that we dream about hunting. And like you said, and like I'll say, and I don't care if anybody's listening to this can argue with me, if a 6-point and a freaking 170-inch 10-pointer both standing at 20 yards, don't tell me, oh, I don't care about those antlers, because you're going to lose your shit and you're going to shoot that 10-point. And for a good reason. That's a tremendous animal, and that's where the trophy part of it comes into it. I love venison. I eat venison as much as I possibly can. I had venison spaghetti for dinner before you and I got on tonight. But I love chasing a big buck, man, and nobody can say they don't. I mean, if you don't love chasing a big deer, you're lying to yourself. Maybe you don't actively pursue them, but the idea of one, the idea of something on your wall, the idea of looking back at that, the idea of showing your friends, that's real. Don't pretend that it's not. So,
right. Well, I guess I want to kind of keep hammering on that same data point for just a minute here about the failing football program. By what metric are we successful? I said, well, by none. You need more evidence? Loads of Michigan hunters are leaving Michigan to hunt other states. And some of those states are one-buck states. Not all, but some. Ohio and Indiana, for example. Hunters will tell you how satisfied they are with how they spend their money.
That's a very simplistic and reasonable way to put it.
Now, the bottom line is, and the department's having all kinds of grief right now with House GOP and finances and the budget. And that's a whole nother podcast, and we're even going to go there. But the bottom line for Michigan deer hunting is we're failing to put a quality product on the table that Michigan hunters want to buy. That's where it lives and dies. And I'll give you this analogy. If you've ever been to a big city someplace, they got food trucks lined up, down the curb, right? There's the taco place, and there's the Korean place, and there's the Indian place, whatever, Coney dogs over here. Well, imagine there's this one food truck in the middle, and it's kind of rickety and dilapidated, and there's some fat guy standing in the window that looks funny. And you go by, and he's like, hey, man, we got plain hamburgers. You want one? No.
There's Korean barbecue over here, man.
Well, come on, man. Everybody loves a hamburger. Well, I don't know. Can I have some ketchup and mustard or some cheese? Oh, we ain't got none of that. I told you get a plain hamburger. Oh, you're not going to buy the hamburger.
No. Especially when it costs what it costs.
We are the plain hamburger.
Yeah.
And, for a long time, I feel like we kind of been told, and you're going to eat it and you're going to like it.
Yeah.
Well, Michigan hunters are not eating it and they're not liking it. I think that's pretty obvious. Now, something I want to segue to quickly here. We talked about trophies. We talked about the big buck. And there's a lot of people out there that are like, oh, man, these one-buck guys are just a bunch of trophy hunters. They're trying to jam this agenda down everybody's throats. No. Now, I'm going to tell you that is categorically false. The one-buck rule has nothing to do with trophies. In fact, in all the conversation that we had on the deer advisory teams, nobody ever talked about that. Now, is one of the byproducts the fact that we're going to have some older, bigger bucks on the landscape? And do we like that? Well, hell yes. But that's not the driver. The driver is herd health, putting the resource first. Incentivizing antlerless harvest, preserving bucks, healthier, more balanced deer herd. That is the goal of a one-buck rule, and to encourage the Michigan hunter to make better informed harvest decisions, which plays back to number one. It is not about trophies. But I'll tell you this much. If you manage any herd effectively, there will also be trophy deer on the landscape. That's a byproduct of a healthy herd every single time.
No, that and going back to your football analogy, I mean, if you're putting the right players in the right program and the right plays into effect, the byproduct of that is you win more games.
Now I'm going to spin this whole trophy thing on its head. We talked earlier in the podcast, the statistic from the DNR, 80% of Michigan hunters are not shooting a doe, not even one. So I want you to think about how that image plays out with the people who don't like our lifestyle. Because as Michigan hunters, we stand on this pedestal and we say, we're absolutely vital for the future of natural resources and conservation and stewardship, rah. And the purple-haired people say, no, you're just trophy hunters. Well, here's a scary fact. The statistics prove them right. We are out there hunting bone. The statistics prove it.
Yeah.
So then how do we argue with those people in the setting of the Natural Resources Commission when they point the finger at us and say, they don't care about the resource? Look how bad the harvest ratios are. Look. How do we defend that? So we as hunters better start thinking about those choices. Because we can say, well, we're not trophy hunters, we're stewards. But are you?
Yeah.
The data says you're not.
Again, man, we're flowing through this so nicely because my very next topic on my list was antlerless seasons and quotas.
Let's do it.
So, special antlerless seasons, they pop up. They're talked about. We have them. I personally think the seasons are getting out of pocket. I think we have, to be honest with you, and this is again like me insulating myself from all the what I consider to be bullshit, but there's so many freaking seasons, and I personally think if you want people to shoot more antlerless deer, don't give them a late antlerless season because, to be honest with you, and I'm guilty of it too, I don't want to go out when it's freaking negative 20 degrees to shoot a doe. It's cold. I'm not out there. I'm not in it. With these special seasons, do you think that they are living up to their purpose?
Absolutely not. 100% intergalactic failure.
And why is that?
Well, I think there's several reasons. But the first thing I want to say, there are biological reasons not to harvest antlerless deer late. It is much better for your herd to harvest antlerless deer early. Reason number one, we already talked about skewed sex ratios across the state of Michigan. Okay. Every doe that gets whacked is a doe that doesn't have to be bred. That's good for your bucks.
Yeah.
That increases their survivability post-rut. They're not so run down. That's a win. Number two, every doe that is whacked earlier leaves more forage, more food on the landscape for the other deer to build up that reserve going into winter and be healthier, more fit, and more able to survive the winter, which then translates to what? Better fawning in the spring.
Better fawning, yeah.
Yeah. You're gonna have robust fawns that don't suffer from low birth weight because the mother was struggling through the winter. You're gonna have well-fed deer. So antlerless harvest actually should happen more front-loaded as opposed to back-loaded, biologically speaking. Now, why doesn't late season work as far as hunter mentality? Well, you hit some key points. It's cold. Yeah, it's cold. Second point, nobody's burning PTO in December and January to shoot antlerless deer. They're not doing it.
Yep.
They burned all their PTO chasing their bucks already October, November, more than likely. So there's no time off left. Number three, if you're like me, you grind hard during hunting season. I mean, you're out in the bush pretty much nonstop from August.
Yeah.
setting up cams and doing all the
365, man. It's
yeah.
really, it's 365.
So then you've got October, November, December with your hunting, and maybe you're not as on top of your household duties as you should be. And the old lady is letting you know
Oh yeah.
you're on notice. You've been spending money, you've been gone. I'm holding down the fort and taking care of the kids, and I'm tired of your shit. No, you're not going doe hunting. That's a reality too, right?
100%.
That factors in. So all I'm seeing is a lot of factors stacked up negatively against hunter participation in late season for a plethora of reasons. And I think that the data bears that out. Was there some measure of success? Well, yeah. Did it matter on a biological level? No, completely negligible.
Yeah. No, I think we're definitely speaking the same language on that one. I hate the concept of a late antlerless season. Like I said, it's freaking cold. Usually if it's cold, that means there's ice, and my mind is shifting away from definitely chasing does in the frozen tundra to getting in my thermal shanty and slamming specks and perch and walleye through the ice. So I'm spending my weekends doing that. I got to find something else to piss the wife off besides just deer hunting.
Well, and there's another data point that we didn't hit, just came to my mind. And this isn't a problem for me because I'm a guy that I go from bush to table all on my own. I process my own deer. My deer don't go to a processor. But for people who do use processors, and there's a lot of, that starts to become a problem in January as well.
Yeah.
Finding processors
that are open. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're killing deer in January. You better get the hide off and get them quartered up pretty quick because they're going to turn into a concrete block with fur on it. We all been there once or twice.
Oh yeah.
That's not pleasant to deal with.
No.
So that presents some unique difficulty as well. I just don't think that the late seasons, extended late seasons, are really serving a purpose. And part of the discussion that we had with Dr. Mike Tonkowitz from Ohio was on their philosophy. Because, for example, they have a very short gun season. Ohio has a 5-day firearm season. 5 days.
Yeah.
And not only did we talk about bucks, but obviously antlerless as well. And he was very adamant. He said, listen, less is more. Less is more. He said, if you shrink this all down and you give people a very finite window of time, hey, if we want does, now is your time. Whatever it is, 10 days, 6 days, I don't care. Less is more.
Thank you.
Because then people are not going to wait. They don't have the option to wait. If they want a freezer queen, you better get one.
Yeah. This is, man, like I'm over here pumping my fist because, so for my 9 to 5, I'm in business. I'm a business development manager for a company that is global, but I work for the North American region, so Canada, the US, and Mexico. And the driving factor, whether you're selling hot dogs or you're selling what I sell, is supply and demand. And if you can create demand by shrinking supply, or in the case of hunting, you can create demand by shrinking availability, you are going to see results. Not by saying you guys got 6 months to do this, because if you're like me, you're going to be like, I'm going to chase my buck and I'll go get my doe in January. And then January comes and I'm like, man, it's cold. There's 8 inches of ice. I'm going to chase walleye. Exactly what you just said.
What we're about to butt up against here is the fellas who think they're real patriotic. They don't tread on my opportunity. Well, here's the thing. You're not using your opportunity now, so what are you yelling about?
Exactly. Yeah.
We're not taking anything from you that you're using. You're wasting it. Realistically, I could make the argument that we can kill whitetail deer in the state of Michigan for 8 months out of the year.
Yeah.
Because if you're taking advantage of crop damage opportunities, you're shooting deer in May, June. And then you've got all your early season, special season, celebrity hunt, independence hunt, archery, firearm, double firearm season, late antlerless, extended late antlerless. We got disease management opportunities as well. I mean, how much opportunity do you need?
And you know, something that I have never looked at until literally we're having this conversation is whether intentionally or unintentionally, maybe what has gone on for the past nearly 2 decades in this state is just what we needed. We've given you guys, we've given you the hunters everything you've asked for. You wanted crossbows, we gave them to you. You wanted guns during muzzleloader season, we gave it to you. You wanted extra seasons, we gave it to you. And it hasn't changed a damn thing. So now let's clear the drawing board, let's start over, and let's really think about what needs to be done. Because we've done everything you've asked, or even if you didn't ask, we in anticipation of you wanting it, gave you everything we could possibly think of, short of letting you shoot deer 12 months a year. So
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And I'm going to say something that's pretty unpopular right now. It's going to sound really, really communist. We've reached a point where we need to stop asking people what they want and tell them what the right thing to do is.
yeah.
We've reached that point.
Hmm.
And I'm going to give you an example because somebody out there, their forehead vein is bulging. So when you drive by a school, a public school, there's a school speed limit sign. And it's usually got school in some kind of high vis green. It's got flashing red lights or whatever the case may be, 25 miles an hour. Well, why do we have that? Well, the obvious answer is, well, for the safety of the children. Well, let's go deeper than that. Why is the safety of the children at risk? Well, because if we don't have that sign and that law that says you cannot exceed 25 miles an hour in a school bus zone, some jackass is going to drive through there at 70 miles an hour because he can. We have to tell people what they can and can't do because
Yep.
they will not self-govern.
Which goes back to what I said, I don't know, an hour ago of if one can, one will. It's just a matter of time. I mean, oh man, this is by far the best conversation I've had. And it's not because I'm over here doing the head bobbing. I honestly thought we would disagree on some more stuff than we have. And we got a few more topics. So maybe you and I will start popping veins at one another, but it's refreshing to see somebody who's in, and I don't want to call it a position of power because I don't want to say that's what it is, but a position of influence, let's call it. You are in a position of influence, whether people want to admit that or not. The being the chair of an advisory team, which is not taken lightly by the decision makers, is a position of influence. Maybe not monetary influence, but it's an influence that does carry some weight. It's refreshing to hear those points of view from somebody who's having those talks with those people. Because again, going back to what we talked about from very, very beginning, so many of us feel like there's no point in us talking because we don't have a voice. But I hope there's people out there listening to this that are like, there's guys like me that have that voice and they're listening to what I have to say and they're channeling that. You're not just, and I could be wrong, Jordan, but from what I'm gathering, you're not just going and having these discussions with the decision makers based on your individual whims and wants and needs. You're going based on the hours of discussions that you had with multiple people and hearing different points and different perspectives and saying, man, I don't necessarily think that's the right move, but maybe it's not the right move for me, but it is the right move for the herd. To me, it's refreshing. So
Yeah, that's exactly right. This isn't the situation where Jordan Hoover's a somebody and I just get to whisper all my secret wish list and the Natural Resources Commission's here. That's not what this is. And I assure you, even though I'm the chairman, we're an advisory team. We do not have, as you said, power. The commission is going to do what they're going to do, and the department's going to do what they're going to do. It's our job to advise the department and the commission. And that's a very serious role, and I take it as such. But to say that we have some kind of power would be embellishing what we are. We're advisory in nature. You know, I think that a lot of people don't understand the deer advisory team. And in fact, I still run into people that are like, the what? There's a deer advisory team? The department hasn't done a really great job of showcasing the advisory team or publicizing it really. And I think part of that was a mechanism of protecting members from public backlash. Because as soon as, you find out who's on the advisory team, then I hate to say it, but there's going to be nasty answering machine messages. And
Sure.
people are going to say things in public. And, that doesn't bother me. I got a thick skin and broad shoulders. And, I talk back, I guess, is the quote the kids say these days. But it doesn't bother me, but it might bother someone else. Not everybody has my personality profile. And the department's gone to great length to keep people private if they want to remain so. Yeah. And they didn't want any bias injected into those individuals either, any leverage exerted against them. They wanted a wholesome, organic advisory team. So I get it. And, they left it at our discretion. If you want to tell people you're on the team, then fine. I felt for me, serving as the chairman, it was my obligation to be very publicly accessible, very easy to reach. Again, using the kids' phrases, I ain't hard to find.
Catch me outside. How about that?
Yeah, catch me outside. I get all kinds of feedback, and I mean, some of it's positive, some of it's negative, some of it's insightful, some of it I could just throw in the trash can immediately. You get all of it.
Sure.
But, I want all of it. It's important to me to hear from other people because, as we articulated already, it's not Jordan Hoover's opinion. I'm a representative, right? I'm carrying the flag for my UP Deer Advisory team. I'm an ambassador. That's what I do. I'm not a king.
Sure.
I'm an ambassador.
No, I think that's I went down the wrong pipe. I think that's awesome. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, Jordan. Up until like a year ago, I honestly, and maybe this is going to sound outlandish to you, and you're going to be like, wow, you're a dumbass, but I honestly thought the Deer Advisory Team was a group of independent citizens who decided they were going to form a team to try to persuade the NRC's opinion on things. Honestly, that's what I thought the Deer Advisory Team was. I didn't realize that this was something that was worked through with the NRC, and they were like, hey, we need something to help us out. And this could just be complete ignorance on my behalf, and maybe I'm alone and maybe I'm not, but I truly thought that the Deer Advisory Team was like a grassroots, like, hey, the NRC has no freaking clue what they're doing. Let's create a citizen board and we will get a bunch of people's opinions and we will put things together and then we will submit them to the NRC. So that, full disclosure, man, that's what I truly thought the Deer Advisory Team was up until like a year ago. So
there's a lot of people that don't know we exist. They're just finding out now, when the buck reg hit the press, everybody's like, well, who are these people and what gives them the right? I didn't elect them. Which is fine, whatever. Like I said, we get all kinds of feedback. But, I want to be very clear that these advisory teams are not stacked with trophy hunters. They're not stacked with wealthy individuals who bought their way in. This is a very diverse group of people. There are rank and file blue collar hunters on this team. And I want to make clear, because I've heard this too, there are no anti-hunters. There's no animal rights people, none of that crap on this team. Everybody that is a part of the Deer Advisory Team is a hunter, period. They come from different walks. So, for example, we've got people that are foresters. We've got people that represent industrial agriculture. We've got people that represent private agriculture, hobby farm type stuff. We've got representatives from the National Deer Association, representatives from UP Whitetails, Upper Peninsula Sportsmen's Alliance. but there's a balance. There's stakeholders, if you will, and then there's independent, unaffiliated persons. And there's an equal amount of both. And you get people that do all kinds of stuff. Like we had one lady on the UP team, she was a school teacher. That was her trade. But she was just a passionate hunter. We got another guy that he's a miner. That's what he does for a living. He works in a mine, but he's a passionate hunter. So every effort was made to encompass all the demographics we possibly could at the table. And again, going back to earlier in the podcast, that's what made that beyond supermajority endorsement of OBR so incredible, is that you had this tremendous group of people that was just so diverse from all across the state in both peninsulas that agreed beyond supermajority, this is what we believe in our heart is right. That makes it even more impressive when you know the composition of the team.
Sure. And I think, and I hope for the listeners out there, I really hope that they key in on what you just said. This isn't a bunch of Lansing folks that are out there puffing their chests, pretending. This is your neighbor. This is your kid's teacher. This is your kid's bus driver. This is the guy that lives down the street who, is the first to come and ask you if you need a plow out after a big snowstorm. These are real people that just have a passion and love for deer hunting. And to me, that's refreshing. I hope other people are getting that out of it too.
I want to point out also that none of us are receiving any form of compensation at all. There is no reimbursement for our time. There's no gifts. There's no kickbacks. There's none of that. I don't get free car insurance from Farm Bureau. You wouldn't believe some of the crazy things that we get accused of. But there's not $1 that has ever crossed any of our hands at any point in time in the 3 years that we've been doing this. This is entirely voluntary. We give our own time and our own money to travel and to do this.
And I think that's how it should be. And I know that's a tremendous burden for those people that do it to carry. But I think to carry that flag, it has to be voluntary. It can't be something that you're getting paid to do because, again, like we talked about a couple hours ago, if you inject money or politics into anything, the sway and the corruption becomes that much more self-evident and that much more easily obtained. So you're doing this out of your own pocket. It's not something that you're getting compensated for. It's costing you time with your family. It's costing you money. It's costing you hours at work that you could be getting overtime. It's costing you something to be a part of this. That means you have skin in the game. So that I respect 100%. I think that's how all these should be. I think if you're passionate about it and you care about it, you're willing to take that sacrifice. So on behalf of myself, and I hope many of my listeners, not only to you, Jordan, but to the rest of the Deer Advisory team, both in the Upper and Lower Peninsula, I want to thank you guys for doing what you do and the sacrifices that you make. Especially, like you said, you got 4 kids. I guarantee you have missed some things that your kids were involved in because of this. But it's something that was ingrained in you by your father, and it's something that you carry on, and you're doing it for the betterment of your kids and their kids. So will everything in every decision and every position that you guys bring forward be 100% accurate and perfect? Maybe not, probably not. I mean, we're humans, we're infallible. I mean, it's just going to happen, but the intention is there, and the fact that you're not getting compensated, to me, just bolsters my conviction that you guys are heading in the right direction. So that makes me feel good about it. I got a couple more things to dive into, and then we'll wrap this up. We'll try to keep these next couple brief because we have been going for like 3 hours, man. My listeners are going to be like, screw this guy, man. I'm listening to this for the next 4 weeks. So, but baiting. baiting is a hot topic. I'm gonna take the lead on this one and give you my perspective, and then I want you to fill in the blanks for me. So, I am not a guy who thinks somebody should go take a truckload of beets or corn and go drive out into the middle of a field or in the middle of the woods and dump it. That's not my idea of baiting. But I remember me, the kid, who was hunting a super skinny, super long 10 acres behind my parents' house. It was the property my parents had bought, and it was a little 10-acre sliver amongst miles of hardwoods and swamp and just big forest. That's what was around us. There was no ag fields. Back then, nobody was planting food plots. Like, a lot of people seem to think food plots is this thing that's been around forever. And yeah, for certain areas, they've been around a long time. But I don't even think if you asked in 1995, if you walked up to somebody in Newaygo and said, "Hey, are you planting food plots?" They'd be like, "You mean like a garden?" They didn't know what the hell a freaking food plot was. They didn't know what the hell you were talking about.
Right.
So I am not pro baiting in the sense that I want people to bait. I personally would prefer people didn't bait, but I am not an anti-bait person because I can remember being that kid hunting that 10 acres on, like I said, just a sea of woods around me. And if I didn't have something there that gave the reason a deer to come by there, the odds of me seeing a deer were virtually non-existent. I mean, they had no reason to come by me. There was a million other oak trees besides the oak trees that were on that 10 acres for them to feed on. So I have a special place in my heart for baiting because I can remember being 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, and it wasn't a slam dunk by any means. I didn't kill my first deer until over a year after me starting to bow hunt, but it was because of bait that I had that opportunity. And I'll be perfectly honest with people when I say that. What is the deer advisory team's position on baiting, and what is the overall feeling you get about baiting both in the lower and upper peninsula?
So the issue of baiting with respect to any official position from the deer advisory team is an ongoing discussion. We do not have a position put to paper at this time, but that discussion is happening. So I would reserve comment in official capacity there. My personal opinion, obviously the Upper Peninsula has baiting and the Lower Peninsula doesn't. And we all understand the reason why. It's the alphabet soup of CWD, DB. It's disease, right? You're gonna get me in trouble. So I'm just gonna empty the 6 shooters here. Do I think chronic wasting disease is an issue? Yes, I do. Do I think it's a real disease? Yes, I do. Do I think it's fatal to deer? Yes, I do. Do I also think that it's been politicized and weaponized? Yes, I do. I would say that the science surrounding chronic wasting disease, which is really, part and parcel to the baiting discussion. I mean, they're inseparable. The science of CWD, I would classify as emerging science, because the experts, the brightest minds, do not agree. There is not consensus. If you have CWD in your state, you need to do the following things in this order, in this way, to contain and eliminate. That doesn't exist. There's all different approaches and ideologies out there amongst the smartest people, far smarter men than I. They don't agree. And when chronic wasting disease became the issue it did in Michigan, I think we kind of hit like the big red panic button, right? Like, we gotta do something. Because if there's one thing a state game agency doesn't want, it doesn't want to be seen as sitting on its hands in the middle of a crisis.
Sure.
Right? And we did something because we needed to do something. Was it the right thing? I don't think so. But we did it. We had to do something. You can make all the arguments about nose-to-nose contact and all that kind of stuff. Here's my thing. All the study that I've done personally on chronic wasting disease tells me that the only way you can destroy a prion is with a blast furnace. So if there's 2.5 gallons of apples or carrots or corn or whatever it is over there, and there's prions there, who cares? Because there's prions in the bedding area where the doe family unit beds on top of each other, licks, grooms, slobbers, uses the licking branch, communal watering hole. Deer are highly gregarious, highly social creatures, and they're going to frequent the same areas on a daily basis. Those prions are everywhere. They're not just at big piles. I think it's intellectual dishonesty. There's nothing you're going to do that's going to eliminate those prions. Even if you banned baiting and it was obeyed like the written word of God, and not one apple hit the ground, it changes nothing, because infected deer are still going to shed the prions and they're going to infect other deer. And those prions are going to remain indefinitely active and capable of infection in the soil for a yet to be determined amount of time, unless you shove them in a blast furnace.
Yep.
How do you even begin? I'll take this further. Let's fence off 1,000 acres. Let's shoot every deer inside of that 1,000 acres, every dang one of them. And then let's wait 25 years. And let's go put more deer back in that 1,000 acres. They're going to get chronic wasting disease.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, all the coyotes and the ravens and all that other stuff is going to swoop down inside that 1,000 acres. At some point, they're probably going to come in contact with a prion. They're going to fly over here to Bob's property. You see where I'm going? You cannot contain this.
That's my position on it, Jordan. And that's why I'm firmly against the baiting ban. And I can see arguments from both sides, and I completely respect and understand when people say, taking a truckload of freaking corn and going and dumping it out there, that's a lazy way of hunting. Yeah, I can 100% agree with that. I can also remember, like I said, being a 12-year-old kid throwing a 50-pound bag of carrots or corn or whatever it was that the gas station by my house had for sale on my shoulder and carrying it 200 yards out into the woods and dropping it just for the chance to see a deer. But going back to the core of what you said and why I personally am against the baiting ban is, let's kill every single deer in the state of Michigan tomorrow. Let's have the National Guard, the Marines, whatever. Let's just infiltrate the state and annihilate every single deer. And then let's fence the state of Michigan off, like you said. And let's wait 20 years. And then let's open the fence up and reintroduce deer. I promise deer are going to contract CWD. It's going to happen. It's not going away. I am not a denier of CWD. I think it's real. I think it's fatal. But I honestly don't think, and one thing that I think a lot of people maybe don't think about that I do think about is, if CWD is as bad as some folks think it is, then let's implement the OBR. Let's see some higher age class deer, and let's see what happens to our deer population when a good percentage of our deer are hitting 4.5, 5.5 years old. Will people then start finding deer laying dead in the woods with no obvious injuries that we can then say, pretty high likelihood this deer died of CWD? I think it's fatal, but I don't think that our deer herd in Michigan is ever seeing the age where the mortality rate of CWD is going to come to fruition, because we're killing our deer so young. And I agree with what you said, that it's almost a knee-jerk reaction. And I hate saying this because it'll piss people off, but I liken it to like COVID. Like,
Oh, 100%.
we've got this crazy disease it looks really bad, guys. So
And
we're
it's
just gonna
severe.
we're gonna shut the freaking world down. And then 2 years later, I'm sitting here. Anybody listening, I'm pure blood. I'm freaking unvaxxed, and I'm still alive.
Same here.
Um, maybe was it dangerous? Sure, to the right people. Is CWD dangerous and deadly? Sure. Is EHD deadly? Sure. Is TB deadly? Sure. Is the front end of a Buick deadly? 100%. At some point in time, we gotta let nature do what nature's gonna do. And I personally, and this might be the religious inclinations that I have, but when things get out of pocket, nature has a means of reining things back in. And it always seems to me, what I see is the prevalence of CWD or the prevalence of EHD always seems to hit pockets where the deer numbers are out of pocket to begin with. So, again, am I probating in the fact that I think, a weekend warrior should be able to just go sit over bait and shoot whatever they want? That's not what I mean by baiting. But I'm not going to tell that guy he can't do it, because I can't say what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I just personally feel like you can't pick and choose where you can allow baiting in the state based on CWD. And I've said this before. I've said it on my podcast, and I've said it on social media posts. If somebody can hand me hard evidence that says baiting is unequivocally attributing or increasing the prevalence of CWD, I'm not a hard ass. I can be persuaded on things, but it's got to be based on fact. And I feel like what we've done is just a knee-jerk reaction without any data to back it up. So I'm just curious what your take on that is.
No, I'm glad that you brought up the COVID reference, because you preempted me. I was going there. And I think that in the same way that COVID was politicized and exploited, CWD has been politicized and exploited. You know how many millions of dollars from the federal government annually pour into state wildlife agencies for chronic wasting disease research?
A lot. Tens of millions. Yeah.
Tons. Well, how do you become eligible for that federal grant money? Well, you got to have a CWD management protocol.
Yeah.
You got to have these rules in place in your state. So we do that. I don't want to make any accusations because I can't prove anything, but has Michigan really spent millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars on CWD research? Has it all gone there? I'm just asking the question.
Sure.
I don't know the answer, and I hope to God it has. I'm not going to accuse the department of dishonesty or mishandling funds. I don't know that, but that's a lot of money over a long span of time, and we don't have any answers.
Sure.
We're not any closer to a cure or anything better mechanism to contain this than we ever were. And I don't know that we're ever going to be. And I'll tell you what I believe. I believe in the concept of herd immunity. I think God's creatures are going to handle themselves.
Yeah.
At some point, we're going to have animals that develop genetic resistances, and those animals are going to breed and reproduce other animals that have those genetic resistances. And eventually, I think this goes away. But I also think our disease management protocols are slowing that from happening. You can't tell the difference between an animal with a CWD immunity chromosome and one without when you pull the trigger, can you?
No, that's just it. And that's where I stick so hard on it is I've never tested a deer for CWD, and I've shot a lot of them since CWD's been talked about here in the state of Michigan, and I've eaten every single one of them, and I'm still alive. And again, I'm not a CWD denier. I'm not one of those guys who thinks that this is a government conspiracy or something like that. I believe CWD is real. I mean, I know historically where it came from. I know how it is spread. But again, I could put two pictures up on this screen right now of a 3-year-old, two 3-year-old does, and one is infected with CWD and one's not. And I challenge anybody to look at those two pictures and tell me which one has CWD. Now I can do the same with EHD, and I could take a 3-year-old doe and put her picture up perfectly healthy, and I could take her 10 days later and put her picture up with EHD, and I could do the same thing with another doe that does not have EHD, and you will easily be able to tell me which one has EHD. I don't think CWD is the boogeyman that we've made it out to be, but I understand, and people might not like this, but like you said, nobody wants to be held accountable should something go sideways. So by acknowledging that it's there and not doing anything, they ran the risk of maybe a population decimation, maybe people contracting it, maybe this becoming a major issue, mad cow, bird flu, pick
Right.
your poison.
Zoonotic disease. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can understand maybe the knee jerk reaction, but I think, let's say it's really been hard hitting for, let's say, the past 5 years. It's probably been, I don't know, it's been longer now, let's say 7 or 8, but, I think we're now at the point where there's a lot of people who are like, is it really that bad? Like, I mean, I don't see deer walking around in the woods falling dead, and then I, send a sample off and they're like, oh yeah, it died from CWD. What I've found, and I would love to find some empirical evidence to point to the contrary, but the only evidence I've saw of CWD is roadkill, hunter submissions, or sharpshooter submissions. I've yet to find, and I could be wrong, and maybe you know of this, but I've yet to find of somebody just finding a deer dead in the woods that appears to have died from no other causes that was sampled and was like, yeah, this deer had CWD, but it didn't have a bullet hole. It didn't appear to be starving. It didn't appear to be emaciated. It didn't appear to have, a cyst or anything like that. So I'm just curious what your take on it is, not necessarily from a DAT perspective, but from a personal perspective.
Well, here's the other interesting data point I'll throw into this conversation. We had one case of chronic wasting disease in the Upper Peninsula, and that was down in Dickinson County, right on the Wisconsin border. But we know that Wisconsin has a very long storied history of their battle with chronic wasting disease. And through radio collar data, we also know that white-tailed deer routinely have crossed over that Upper Peninsula of Michigan and Wisconsin border, in some cases as far as 50 miles. So it's plausible to believe that CWD positive deer have come in contact with Upper Peninsula deer. At some point, it has happened.
Sure.
So early in the podcast, we talked about deer winter complexes. That is the ideal petri dish for a disease.
I was about to say, that's like the breeding ground for any disease, right?
If we got chronic wasting disease, one positive deer in a deer winter complex, it would be a decimation level event. They're in there for 5 months, nuts to butts. I mean, that is the ideal confines for a communicable disease to spread like wildfire. So given that the first statement is true, that at some point we've had positive deer cross back and forth, and given the yarding habits of our Upper Peninsula deer, explain to me why the whole Upper Peninsula has not absolutely exploded with chronic wasting disease if everything they've told us about the nature of that disease is true.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair question to ask, and that's the question I think a lot of folks ask, not just myself. Again, I don't think it's a made up thing. I think it's a real thing, but and again, going back to what I said here 10 minutes ago, I think if you really want to know how bad CWD is, now that we've had several years of data to put together, and we've had this baiting ban, which, by the way, whether people want to admit it or not, the people that were baiting, they didn't quit baiting. I mean, I have gas stations around me that are refilling their bait stations, multiple times a week. People are
Metric
buying it.
tons of bait.
Yeah, I mean, I went to in October, I think it was October, I went to my local co-op to buy a bunch of rye seed, some cereal rye to plant over my food plots, and there was a guy there with a 3/4 ton diesel backed up, and I believe, I don't know how many bags, how many 50-pound bags of corn do you think you can fit in the back of a long bed diesel? I mean, there was a lot of corn back there, and he was heading to the UP to his property, and he was bringing all that corn up there, and he was going to fill his feeders, and then he has a shed that he stores it in. And that's just one example because I happened to be there when I was buying my cereal rye, but I see it at every gas station. I see it at every produce stand. And the fact that we know, whether we want to admit it or not, that the ban has done little to nothing to curb baiting, let's say over the past 5 years, and we have not seen really any change in the data as far as numbers of CWD positive deer. I think we're at a safe position where we can say baiting's probably not a primary culprit to the spread or efficacy of CWD, and maybe if we get this OBR put into place and we start seeing an age structure change, maybe we start seeing, and again, this is where I come back to, I'm not hard-assed to the point where I won't believe something, but maybe 5-6 years from now, when we start seeing that age class creep up to 3.5, 4.5, and we start seeing deer just, I don't know, I just walked up on this deer and it was dead. It doesn't have EHD. There was no HD around here. Oh, it's got prions. Well, okay, now we're seeing some actual data we can use. When these deer hit 3.5 or 4.5 years old, they're going to succumb to that CWD disease. And then we look at it and say, at 3.5 or 4.5, is this disease detrimental to the herd or is it not? Because from what I've seen over the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I don't think CWD is as detrimental to the herd as we originally were led to believe it could be. And that's the key word, is could, because when I look at the data, I look at the studies, I don't ever see the word will or has. I see could or potential. Those are the key words I see in the studies.
Well, the nature of good science is that we continue to question what we think we know and evaluate data streams as they come. And I'm like you, I'm certainly willing to eat crow and say, oh, well, I guess I was wrong. I'll stand corrected if it comes around that age class of bucks is an issue or baiting is an issue. Then I'll eat my hat. Fine. I'm man enough to say I'm wrong, but I'm not seeing compelling evidence at this time. And the other side of this that we haven't really talked about is the enforcement side of
Sure.
baiting. The baiting ban is the biggest scofflaw in the state of Michigan. It's a joke. It isn't stopping anybody. I mean, outside of Honest Joe, who's going to follow the law to the letter, and if the speed limit is 25, he is driving exactly 25. A lot of people just continued baiting.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, if baiting was the vector that was going to destroy us, it hasn't happened. And I think that even though you could classify that as anecdotal evidence, I think it's worth examining.
Yeah.
And it's not enforced either. And a lot of people are like, well, either enforce the baiting ban or repeal it. I can tell you from a DNR law enforcement side, they have been very, very frustrated in trying to enforce the ban because they have written the tickets. And then when they go to, a Wayne County court, the judge looks at the docket and he's like, approach the bench. I've got 2 rapes, 2 narcotics trafficking, and 5 murders on my docket before lunch. And you idiots want to come in here and harangue my court about some bullshit carrots?
Yeah.
Case dismissed. Get out of my courtroom.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong, but I'm saying that's a reality.
That's the reality of it.
Resources.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Judges don't care about the carrots. They don't. So then if you're the department and you ticket somebody and the judge throws it out, and then 4 weeks later, let's say you ticket a guy over in Ionia, and that judge throws the book at him. Well, now you've got an inequity in the application of justice. Now there's a problem.
Yeah.
Well, this judge isn't even going to prosecute. Well, this judge over here gave him the max.
Yeah.
That's an issue.
Yeah.
The equal application of justice is I mean, it's a constitutional right.
Yeah. And I think I think you just hit the nail on the head right there. I don't know, man. It's when it comes to baiting, just in general, and going back to what you said back when we were talking about industrial private land usage, I never want to be the guy to be like, oh, you can't do that on your land. Now, when it comes to baiting on public land, I'm a staunch opposer to that. And it's not because I don't think you, or I don't know what the right word is, not because I think you don't deserve to be able to bait. Maybe that's the way to word it. That's a shared public resource. But I'm also the guy who doesn't think that you should be able to put a tree stand on public land. I think if you're going to hunt public land, you go in, you hang, you hunt, or you ground, you hunt, and you leave with everything you came in with. That's the way I look at public land. That is a shared resource, not just for hunters, but for hikers, for bird watchers, for anybody. And as a shared resource, whatever you take in needs to come out with you when you leave. That's the way I look at it. That's why I am not pro baiting on public land. It's not because I think of CWD or anything of that, or I don't think of individual rights. I just think when you're dealing with a shared property or a shared resource, that when you leave that shared resource, it needs to look the exact same as it did when you walked into it. So
I think that's a good stance. I'm going to push back on you on this one.
okay.
So, what would you say if I said that allowing baiting, feeding, all this kind of stuff, food plots on private land, and then disallowing those same privileges on public land sets up a story of the haves and the have-nots, and in the end, the privatization of success in the deer woods?
And I cannot disagree with you on that. I think at that point in time, it does become somewhat of a story of the haves and the have-nots. If you have the means to obtain enough property, be it an acre or 100 acres of private land that you pay taxes, you have sweat equity, and you have put money into acquiring beyond just your standard state taxes, I believe that you have maybe a little more, maybe right is not the right word, but I want to use,
ugly, doesn't it?
I want to use the word right because you're paying for that property. You bought the property, you're paying the property taxes on it. Whereas state land, I might be a guy who makes $300,000 a year, and the equal amount of my taxes go into paying for that property as the guy who has zero income, and he has as much access to that property as I do. So that's where I think a little bit of that have and have not comes into play.
You don't necessarily feel that it needs to be equitable.
Not when it comes to public land, no, because you could be in a position where the state pays you every year to live in the state of Michigan. And there's people in this state who have that. They literally are paid by us taxpayers to live here. And whether that's right or wrong or indifferent, and different circumstances are different for different folks, but that same person has the right to go out on Hiawatha forests the same as I do, as a guy who makes, 6 figures a year. So I don't have the right to screw with that property any more than he does, or vice versa, if that makes sense.
So what do you see as the differential? Like, let's set up a scenario here.
Sure.
Let's say there's 3 parcels of land right in a row, and going left to right, there's a 40, a 10, and a 100-acre parcel. Now on the 40, that guy's got, let's say, a 5-acre food plot, which is pretty big. That's substantial. On the 10-acre parcel, that guy's got a bucket of corn. On a 100-acre parcel, there's soybeans. Somebody's farming that. That's leased out, whatever the case may be. Let's say the state of Michigan ends up in some way, shape, or form owning that 10-acre parcel that's sandwiched between the two. And somebody decides they want to hunt that. You could argue that the deer might just transit back and forth and he's got a premium spot. Well, it depends on the lay of the land, doesn't it?
100%.
You've been out there enough to know the deer may or may not move through that. That could be a completely worthless parcel. But if it's state land in lower Michigan, there's going to be a hunter on it, period.
Yep.
In that scenario, if John Smith wants to go out there and put out 2.5 gallons of carrots so he can shoot himself a deer, what negative impact does that have on another hunter, in your opinion, in that circumstance?
So I love this question. So I'm going to give you my best shot at it, and let's see where you fall on this. As far as a negative impact on another hunter, virtually none. Because literally another hunter can walk out there and be like, oh, John Doe's baiting here. I'm going to hunt right here. No skin off his back. He gets to hunt a free spot. He doesn't even have to bring the bait out there. So no impact on the hunter, in my opinion. Where the impact lies is the anti-hunter, who's a hardcore bird watcher, who loves to walk out to this particular area of woods to see a pileated woodpecker in its natural habitat, and he wants to take pictures of it. And he walks out there and he comes across the bait pile and he runs a deer off it, and then he looks and he sees a tree stand sitting there and he's like, oh, this guy's sitting here out on public land that I pay taxes for, so I can come out here and watch this pileated woodpecker is out here putting an unnatural food source on this public land so that he can shoot a deer off from it. Mm-hmm. That's where I think as hunters we have to look at it and play the game like we talked about earlier. Is it morally wrong to throw bait on public land? I don't think it's morally wrong, but it's optics, and it's a resource that it's not just there for us hunters. We like to think of it, and I like to think of it, to be honest with you, as if it's public ground, it's there for hunters. But that's not the only person it's there for. It's also there for the 70-year-old man who lives on a 1-acre lot in a trailer, who goes out there and cuts deadfall that's laying on the ground because he has a legal right to go pull that deadfall off the ground by state law and heat his trailer. It's there for the bird watcher. It's there for the hiker. Public land is a different animal, in my opinion, when it comes to the regulations. And I've talked about this in other episodes of my podcast, where I don't set up and bow hunt right off of a hiking trail. It might be a great place to hunt. It might be a great crossing, but it's the optics of it. It's for the guy that's not a hunter but just likes to go hike public land. He doesn't need to see me sitting up there trying to kill an animal he thinks is precious. Whether he's right or wrong doesn't matter to me. It's the optics of it. I would rather go in where he's never going to see me, just the same as I would prefer he stuck to the hiking trail versus going and taking his dog for a walk through the swamp that I'm trying to hunt. It's a delicate game that we play, and we got to remember that public land is not just for us hunters. It's for everybody in this state, whether they're purple-haired or they're a red, white, and blue flag flying, right-wing conservative. It's there for all of us, and that's where I take the stance on the whole baiting thing. I just don't feel that baiting is the right optics on public land.
I think that is a really great answer, a really thoughtful answer, and I agree with a lot of the sentiment. And now I'm going to throw a wrench in it.
I love it.
When I buy a rifle, when I buy ammunition, when I buy hunting clothing, when I buy boots, when I buy arrows, when I buy broadheads, when I buy a bow sight, when I buy anything, in the hunting world. There's Pittman Robertson dollars.
Yep.
There's Dingle dollars. Okay. I buy a license to deer hunt. I buy a license to fish. I buy a small game license. I buy an ORV sticker. In fact, 2 of them. Buy a snowmobile trail permit. I buy a watercraft sticker. I buy a park pass. I do all of these things, all of my purchases, every dollar. I'm supporting conservation. I'm supporting the infrastructure of conservation. We built the hiking trail that they walk on. They
Yep.
didn't build it.
Yep.
We did.
Yep.
And I have yet to see a hiker who's proposed, well, there should be a tax on hiking boots and trekking sticks and backpacks to further, this thing that we love. They don't want to do that. They want to use our shit for free.
Yep.
I've yet to see a kayaker volunteer to pay for a watercraft sticker. They don't want to. Well, I got a paddle. I don't have a motor. I ain't paying for that. But they want to use the same resource that I do with my bass bow. Right? And I got a problem with something for nothing. I got a problem with this free shit culture, right? Conservation isn't free.
No.
And like you said, you talked earlier about maybe there's a right that comes with ownership. Well, we have ownership when we're paying the bill.
Yeah.
It's not any different than having children, right? My child doesn't tell me how I'm going to run my house.
Yeah.
I'm paying the bills around here.
100%.
And one day you're going to run your own house and you can set whatever rules you want. As long as you're under my roof and I'm paying the bills. These are the rules.
Yep. And
So
the fact that you brought this up, I love it so much because I think, man, I don't know. One of my first wild takes, I don't remember which one it was, but it was early on when I first started this. And Jordan, I don't even know if you know this, but obviously my listeners know. I've only been at this since I think my first podcast episode was in August of 2025. So let's say 7 months now. One of my first wild takes that I posted on social media was I think the title of it, and I might be screwing this up a little bit, but it's close, was the Michigan Hunter, the sugar daddy of public lands. That was the name of my wild take, and it was about exactly what you just talked about. And I am 100% for, and people that do this recreationally might not like it, but if you're going to use any public resource, whether it's a public access to a river, whether it's a public hiking trail, whether it's a public parking place to get onto public lands, I believe there should be, if a hunter has to pay for a hunting license, then I believe that those folks should have to pay for some sort of an access license to do the same. Big picture, do I think it's right? Like, honestly, like if we're going to really get into the roots of it, I think as taxpayers, we pay enough for the state and for the resources that we shouldn't have to pay for that stuff. But as a hunter, as a lover of the resources that we have, I am more than willing to pay my $20 recreational passport or whatnot, as long as I know that it's going towards the intended purpose or what we're told that intended purpose is. And I feel that hikers, kayakers, bird watchers, dog walkers should feel the same. And if they don't, then they need to look in the mirror and be like, why do I feel I have a right to this, but I'm not willing to put it into the kitty? So,
well, entitlement is its own podcast. So let's throw one more wrench in this discussion. We'll really twist this up.
I love it.
So let's say all the Jesus sandals and trekking sticks crowd says, well, fine. We'll buy a kayak sticker and we'll put a tax on hiking boots and backpacks and trekking sticks and paddles and binoculars. We'll do that. We'll pay our fair share. But We want a seat at the table because we're paying in. Now the question becomes, as a hunter, fisherman, outdoorsman, when those voices of non-consumptive users that maybe don't share your values now have a growing seat at the table, there becomes a whole nother problem.
Yeah, that's a great wrench to throw into it right there. And that's where guys like me, guys like you, guys like the listeners out here, we got to show up to those meetings when those folks are saying that and being like, look, guys, you think this is a utopia of nature, but without us, this is a desolate, disease-infested, wasteland. And I think we have a great case to show that. And I think maybe, and I could be wrong, maybe this is just naivety on my part, but I think maybe we can sway some of those folks to be like, yeah, without hunters, there's an overpopulation of grouse in here. There's an overpopulation of deer in here. There's an overpopulation of you name it in here. And without the hunters that are coming in here and managing that resource, we don't have the opportunity to enjoy the resource that we enjoy.
Very much so. And I think this traces back to earlier portion of our discussion this evening, that what the Michigan hunter needs right now today, more than ever before, is a stewardship mindset reset. What can we give?
Yes.
Not what can we take. And it goes back to what you and I discussed about that divine mandate. That's a precious thing.
It is.
It is a beautiful, wonderful thing. Everybody always remarks about liberty, but they forget the luggage that liberty comes with. It comes with responsibility and it comes with consequences.
Yep. Use
your liberty as you see fit,
yeah,
but uphold your responsibility and understand the consequences if you don't.
Yeah. And you've given me a bumper sticker. Like, I'm already like, I want to create a bumper sticker or a window sticker that says stewardship is a verb, not an adjective. I think that should sum up the mentality of the Michigan hunter. I mean, it's not an adjective. We are not stewarding towards something. That is the action that we are taking. That is a verb. That is an actionable item that we are doing.
You want to have a conversation about falling hunter numbers on a national level, including the state of Michigan, and R3, recruitment, retention, deactivation, all these things. We want to have a conversation about the optics of hunting and the war against our culture. I think it has to center around reasserting ourselves as the dominant force of stewardship. Yeah. It is us. It is the hunter. And when people see us doing the work, whether it's planting trees, doing habitat work, and the bird watcher lady comes by, what are you doing? Oh, well, me and a bunch of guys that like to bow hunt out here on public land, we got this grant from the DNR, and we're putting in whatever cedar trees. Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, your woodpeckers love this tree. Yeah.
Things like habitat work are completely non-divisive. I don't care if you're a Democrat, you're a Republican, you're a liberal, you're a conservative, you're a Catholic, you're a Jew, you're a Buddhist, you're gay or you're straight. Nobody is going to walk up to someone else planting trees and go, what the hell are you doing?
You son of a bitch. Yeah. I'm with you 100% on that, man. That's definitely a head nod right there, for sure.
Doing things like that, doing the habitat work, does the cedar benefit deer? Well, of course it does, but it also benefits a plethora of other species. That is stewardship.
Yeah, it's action.
Optics matter, our actions matter, our choices matter, and the sooner we have a reawakening of that stewardship mindset in the state of Michigan, the better off we're going to be.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more on that one, Jordan. I think that just, man, I really think that if anybody's going to take anything away from this episode, I think what you said about stewardship is an action. It's not an adjective. I think that's a fantastic point to take away from this. And yeah, I think that spans political parties. I think it spans anti-hunters, pro-hunters. It spans everybody. Nobody's going to look at the guy planting a tree and be like, what are you doing? And be like, oh, I'm planting a tree because, 15 years from now, when this tree is 3 inches in diameter, a buck is going to come use this as his licking branch, or a woodpecker is going to come peck this thing to death before it even hits 3.5 years of maturity, or a squirrel is going to come pull leaves off from this thing in October to make its nest. You're going to be hard pressed to find somebody who's going to be like, oh, that's bullshit, don't do that. So, man, I think this has been a great conversation. I think we've agreed on a lot more than maybe I thought we would, and that's what I loved about this conversation. Maybe that's what I hoped for from this conversation, was for folks out there who think that there is no light at the end of the tunnel because everybody that's making the decisions is dug in and they're being paid for and their pockets are being lined by Lansing. It's not the case. There's guys like me, like you out there, like our listeners out there, that we want to see things change. And maybe, like we've said before, maybe it's not going to be the most comfortable thing for us personally from an individual perspective, but maybe for the resource that we love, it's the right move to make. So from that, I think we'll shift to kind of our closing comments. Dude, we've gone for so long. This is so awesome. I mean, I could literally go back 2 pages and start over and dig into this more. So I honestly, Jordan, I hope, maybe we can have this conversation again. Maybe we can talk. Maybe there's something in here that you felt like, hey, we should have really dug into this, that we can dig into more and maybe have another conversation. But for the folks out there listening, both from Michigan and abroad, has Michigan lost touch with our heritage, with what we were raised on, what we thought Michigan was when it came to hunting and just, the outdoors in general? Have we lost touch with that?
I would say yes. And this funnels right back to the stewardship conversation. During my father's time, hunting was for enjoyment and for sustenance and for peace, dare I say. On modern day, I refer to, my favorite hunting grounds as my church. That's where I go and I plug my soul back into the source of the wild, where all the cares and the stresses of the world, they can't touch me there. There's something pure and good about that. You remarked about feeling that feeling when you cross the bridge and you get into God's country in the UP. It's something special. It's a whole different feeling. And I think that most of us who are passionate hunters, when we go out into our hunting grounds, to some extent, we have that feeling on some level.
Yeah.
That peace, that equilibrium, that goodness in our soul. And, our dads weren't any different than we were. If the 6-pointer and the 10-pointer are standing next to each other, we know which one's getting shot. That wasn't what drove them. It was the camaraderie of camp, telling stories with the guys around the campfire, all the awful stories that get told and laughed about later on that aren't so funny at the moment, like setting up camp at 2:00 in the morning in the pouring rain, and Joey tripped and fell with the hatchet in his hand and gashed the side of our tent. So we got rained on all night because there's a gash in the side of the tent. We were ready to beat Joey's ass. We couldn't believe he did that. All the funny stuff that happens, all the lessons learned. We ventured into the wilderness to test ourselves. And I think that when a man does that, he learns things about who he is and who he wants to be that you will never learn any other way.
Yeah.
And our fathers knew that. There was a goodness and a wholesomeness and a purity in the relentless pursuit of personal excellence. But what do I mean by personal excellence? Maybe it was shooting that big nanny doe from the ground at 8 yards with a recurve. Maybe it was making that expert shot on that buck chasing the doe and you had one hole in the clearing and it was a 120-yard shot with your 30-30. Whatever it was, we prepared, we trained, we were masters of our craft and our environment. We were stewards of the wild. That was our father's generation. Those were the things that were important to them. They weren't in the wilderness hunting inches. They were hunting experiences. They were hunting personal growth. They were hunting spiritual growth. That's why they were there. The inches were a bonus.
100%, man.
Today, it's all about them inches.
Yeah.
It's all about ego and one-upsmanship. Mine's bigger than yours. You're still shooting a 2024 Hoyt? Really? That's who we've become.
Yeah.
We pour bottomless amounts of cash into funding an industry that at every bend and corner is selling us a crutch. Another way to make it better, faster, easier, smoother, less hassle. Whatever happened to the fact that hunting is supposed to be a damn hard thing to do? It's not supposed to be easy.
Amen.
The deer's supposed to win. That's the point.
Yeah.
Success isn't a given. A hunting license isn't a meat voucher. It's the purchase of an opportunity.
Thank you.
But we've gotten away from that. The soul of the hunt is pursuit, relentless pursuit of personal excellence. It's not about what you kill. And we've forgotten that.
Man, I don't think I could put it any better, Jordan. I really don't. I'm trying to think of what I can add to that, but you pretty much solidified it for me. I try to take it back, and I try to take it back for the guys who. And don't get me wrong, I am blessed. I have been blessed. God has blessed me with the opportunity to. There's not a lot of. I mean, think about it. How many guys that are 42 years old can say they own 60 acres of private land in the state of Michigan? There's not a lot of us. I mean, there's not. This state is so fragmented with subdivisions and city limits and this and that, you know, the 300-acre farms, they don't exist anymore. I mean, they're becoming a fairy tale in and of themselves. Those big chunks of land have been sold out to the next generation who could give a crap about hunting. They're looking at the almighty dollar. And I'm not faulting them for doing that. At the end of the day, I mean, if you can have a 300-acre farm and sell it for $1 million, that's a hard pill to turn down. I mean, why wouldn't you if you can create some generational wealth for your family? But at the end of the day, what you just said it strikes a chord so deep with me, because hunting to me it's not about these deer behind me. It's about the stories. It's about the memories. It's about, teaching somebody something they didn't know. It's about learning something that I didn't know. God, if you stop thinking that if you start thinking that you know everything that the woods have to offer, you are so far behind the game. It's not even funny. The woods
100%.
They can humble you. They can teach you. They can refine you. I really don't know what else to say about that other than if you're not actively involved in the woods, even if it's not hunting, if you're not out there feeling God's pulse, man, you're missing out. I don't know what else to say about that. It's just, you don't have to be a hunter to feel the pulse of God, but be in his creation and understand what we were given and the dominion we were given, which means responsibility. It's a heavy weight to carry, but it's a weight that we should carry proudly. I mean, I don't know how else to word it than that. So,
Well, I'll take it a little more biblical since we kind of got on that topic. When Moses went to pray, when the Ten Commandments were created, where did Moses go? The mountain. Moses went to the mountain to hear God's voice. And in our own way, that's what we do, I believe, is we go to our mountain to hear our Maker's voice. You know, we've chewed through a lot of politics and regs and bureaucracy and all those sorts of things tonight. And those are all necessary conversations. But I think the biggest question facing the hunter in the state of Michigan today, there's two. The first one is, who do you want to be? And secondly, what are you going to leave your children? And the answer to the first question will answer the second.
100%. Yeah. I can't come over the top and say it any better than that. I always think about, 30, this coming season will be my 31st year of bow hunting. And I guarantee you, if you ask me what I did in 1993, if I thought about it for a little bit, I could tell you what I saw, what the opportunity I had was, where I was, all that good stuff. And then if you ask me in 2007, I could do the same. It's a different mindset. It's a different mentality. And when you look at it from the big picture, like I said, I've got 3 daughters. My middle daughter wanted to go squirrel hunting. I took her squirrel hunting. She drew her gun. She had a bead on a squirrel, and she was like, "Do I have to shoot it?" And I was like, "No. If you don't want to shoot it, you don't have to shoot it." My oldest daughter, she wanted to go deer hunting. I took her out deer hunting. The first deer that came upon us, and I'll admit this on camera, was a button buck. And she was so fired up that button buck came within shooting range. She said, "Are you going to shoot it?" And I'm like, "Do you want me to shoot it?" And she's like, "Yeah." I shot a button buck. It's the first button buck I ever shot in my life, man. I mean, I would have never shot a button buck. But to see her eagerness and her love of it, and to be like, "Oh my God, we got a deer and it's a button buck and it's going to be venison in the freezer for us." I shot a button buck. My youngest daughter, the first time she went out hunting, was November 15th, 2022. Sitting in a ground blind, a 3-point walked out. And I'm like, "Do you want to shoot it?" She's like, "Yeah." And she shot that 3-point. To me, I don't give a shit. It could have been 170 or it could have been a doe. It does not matter to me. The unfortunate part for me was all 3 of my daughters, while they're not anti-hunters, I don't want people to think that. They just, the taking of an animal's life just wasn't for them as women. And I'm not saying that that's wrong or it's a misplaced virtue. They just, the thought of taking something's life with their own hands just didn't appeal to them. And I can respect that. But when you look at it from that point of view, and with you having 4 sons, and you think about it, just because my 3 daughters don't hunt, they're not anti-hunters. They don't look down on me for hunting. And I hope to God that when they have children, one of them is interested in hunting. And they say, well, Grandpa took me hunting and I didn't like it, but Grandpa loves it. So I'm not the one to teach you about hunting. Go talk to Grandpa. That's why I do what I do. And that's why I hope the folks that are listening out there maybe pull a nugget out of this, and maybe there's some self-reflection there. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I certainly have to acknowledge that there's more women hunters today than there ever has been in the history of hunting in Michigan. That's a pretty quickly growing demographic. And I'm certainly happy to have all the ladies out there in the woods. I don't feel like it should be a boys' club necessarily. But I will say this. You look at the origins of hunting from the oldest of days, the cave paintings, whatever, when there were nothing but clans and tribes. Hunting heritage followed a patrilineal descent for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, from father to son, from father to son, from father to son. And there's a mantle of leadership that is passed from father to son with that as well. A child doesn't become a steward unless he's taught. I didn't become what I am without my father teaching me, shaping me, correcting me, molding me. And I'll put emphasis on the correcting me. I tell people all the time, when it comes to deer hunting, I failed my way to success. I think that the value of what a father gives his son or his daughter, but especially his son in the woods, is immeasurable. I do backcountry camp. I take my two oldest boys and we go miles deep into the woods. We take the 4-wheel drive as far as we dare go. We unload the ATV, the jet sled, go as far as we can go, and then we'll set up base camp. And that's where we're going to stay for whatever it is, the week or a long weekend, however much time we got. Juggling sports and all this stuff is hard. But we'll do that backcountry camp. And then we'll kind of satellite out. We'll disperse from base camp and we'll put up our stands. And those boys are never so engaged and so alive as when they're in those places with me as their father.
Amen to that, man.
We walk together through the woods. And of course, we talk about deer sign or game trails or all those things. I'm teaching them those things. But we talk about life.
Yeah.
We talk about the struggles of what it is to be a young man and how to navigate those things. We talk about girls, we talk about drugs, we talk about booze, we talk about leadership. A lot of the most important conversations I ever had as a young man happened in the woods.
I was about to say you want to really get a pulse on where your kid is at in life, go spend 10 hours in a ground blind or in a double tree stand sitting next to them and just let the silence lead the conversation, and you will learn more about what your kid is doing and where their life is at and where their mind is at than you will learn in hours of sitting at home watching Everybody Loves Raymond. I mean,
I'm not about to sit here and opine what's air quotes wrong with kids and video games and screen time and all that. But you know what? I'm going to say that's a problem anyway.
yeah, it is. It is. I mean,
It's a cultural disease, and we are getting further and further from our roots. And technology has its place. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like a shut the internet off forever kind of guy, but I think they're, especially the social media influence, right? And we see this in the hunting world. It is a black hole that just sucks people's soul into it. And it is caustic. It's corrosive. It's not positive. It's not uplifting. I mean, most of the times I'm scrolling through social media, I'm disgusted. If I'm honest, I'm disgusted.
It's
What would we do?
some of it's downright embarrassing. Like you call yourself a hunter and you post that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. We could have a whole podcast
Oh
on
boy.
what's happening to the next generation, but ultimately, I really think if you really want to wrangle in and get a hold of the next generation and guide them in the direction that we feel is the right direction for them, is get them in the woods, whether it's hunting, whether it's fishing, whether it's hiking, backpacking, whatever it is. You will find the most honest conversations when you're amongst the creation that we were given than you will ever find anywhere else. And this is coming from a guy who I spent years on a softball field with 3 girls, coaching softball. I had a lot of great conversations on the softball field, but I'm telling you, the most honest conversations I ever had with my daughters was sitting there chasing game, whether it was squirrels or deer.
I guess just to wrap it all up with a bow on top of it, I would say this to our listeners here tonight. And if you're still with us, God bless you, because this has been an ultra marathon podcast tonight, and I hope you enjoyed it.
I hope so.
I would say this: good things are coming in the state of Michigan with deer management. Change is coming. Hold on. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not saying it's all going to please everybody, but good things are coming. And we have to be prepared to do our part as stewards. We have to be prepared to step up and engage in a meaningful way like we never have before. Because if we want different than we've ever had, if we want better than we've ever had, we have to do things we've never done.
I like it. I like it. All right, Jordan, we've been going for 4 hours, I think now, man. So I'm gonna do some rapid fire, and you just hammer them out as quick as you can. All right.
All right, hit me.
What's your favorite UP memory, hunting or otherwise?
Oh my gosh. Hunting or otherwise. Well, I guess I'll give you a hunting one.
Okay.
So I was 17 years old, and of course, at 17, I was a full-grown man, knew everything.
Knew everything.
That's right. Twice as tough as anybody else, and twice as smart too. And we were at bow camp down in Iron County around Crystal Falls. So my dad, my uncles, everybody, we were all piled into camp. And my uncle Brett, he always really enjoyed Native American culture, and he was fascinated by it. And he was always coming off with some native stuff, like, oh, well, did you know that they used to do this ritual prior to the hunts or whatever? And I didn't know if it was true or not. I didn't know if he was pulling it out of his ass, but it made sense. And I never questioned Uncle Brent. So long story short, it's the black of the morning. Clink, 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 clink. I go up my climbing sticks. I climb into my tree stand. And here's a Chinese takeout box sitting on the seat of my tree stand. And we are miles from anything. Like, there is no one anywhere. So right away, I knew one of the guys had put it in my seat. And I'm like, oh, haha, this is real funny. So tucked into the top of it was a business card. And I pulled it out, and it was my Uncle Brett's business card. Like, what is this? So I flip it over, and on the back of the business card is scrawled in pen, says, "This is an ancient Indian good luck ritual." It says, empty entire contents of package into left hand, chanting, "Gotta snick, gotta snick." Yeah, it can't hurt.
I'll do it.
So I rip open the Chinese takeout box, and out flies a gardener snake. Yeah, gotta snick, gotta snick. All right.
I got it. Got a snake. All right.
Oh yeah. So I screamed like a little girl and threw the shit out of my tree stand. And I was later told that I was heard a quarter mile away by my Uncle Brett in the dark of the morning, and he laughed his ass off.
I love it, man. I wish I had something that funny. I'm gonna remember that one. I might do that to my grandkid for sure. Got a snake, got a snake. I like it. I like it. Uh, what's uh, what's your personal preference, bow or gun?
Oh, I'm a bow hunter. I'm a diehard bow hunter.
Like,
I'm
like it.
I'm not above the rifle. I'll use the smoke pole too, but yeah, I hunt with a compound, and that's my passion.
There's nothing like the up close and personal you get with a bow and arrow for sure. What's your dream hunt, Jordan? If you could pick any country, any state, any region, any species, like what is that one that's always been on the top of your bucket list?
Oh, that one is really tough. So I'm going to give you two answers
Okay.
because one, there's no way in hell I will ever afford. I would love to do um, a Canadian moose or a Russian moose, Kamchatka Peninsula, or get up in the Yukon, do a Yukon moose with my bow. Um, do the whole backcountry camp, pack in, pack out. That would be phenomenal. Meanwhile, back within my blue collar budget, um, I would really, really enjoy getting up to either Alberta or Saskatchewan and doing an extended time period with a bow in my hand, going after one of those big mahogany monster bucks up there.
Just one of them 300-pound toads, right?
Yeah.
Heck yeah, man. One that wasn't on my list, but I got to add it right here. Shit, I just had it and then I forgot. Oh, it was a good one too. I'll try to come back to it because I don't want to leave a bunch of dead air here. How do you feel like? I mean, I think we beat this over the head, but if you could just summate this in one sentence, what is the importance of hunter engagement in Michigan?
If you're not showing up and speaking up, you're being spoken for.
I like it. Put up or shut up. It's really that simple. I mean, that's kind of blunt, and it kind of hits me in the face because I have not shown up, but I'm more and more encouraged to do so because I feel more and more since we've been talking that there's actually some light at the end of the tunnel if I do speak up.
I would add this, and I don't want to get too carried away because I could go on a tear with this. I'm not going to speak against stakeholder groups, deer groups, whatever. But I am going to say this. Too many guys go into whatever group, be it a Pheasants Forever or Whitetails Unlimited, whatever, pick one. And they throw down their $50 or whatever it is for the annual membership. Maybe they show up and they go to a gun raffle and a keg party, whatever, buy some raffle tickets. And that's where it stops. What you have effectively done is you have subcontracted your personal responsibility as a steward to an organization. You have paid them to do your job as a hunter, because we all have an individual responsibility. And the most powerful thing that you have at your disposal as a Michigan hunter is your own voice. Don't ever subcontract your own voice.
I love it. And that segues into my closing thoughts. What do you see the future of Michigan hunting being if we maintain the status quo versus if we light some hair on fire?
Well, I'm going to throw a barb out here that kind of is going to make some people think. And this is a little bit of support for the $1 recommendation at the same time. Everybody likes to talk about the data, the science, which by and large, people don't know the data and the science anyway. They're just parroting somebody else.
Guilty.
But show me the science and show me the data, big air quotes, that justifies maintaining our current deer regulations because they have facilitated what positive outcomes? because we already talked about earlier in the show the herd health metrics within carrying capacity, broad distribution of age classes, and balanced sex ratios. We do not satisfy any of those categories. So how do we, on a biological basis, justify maintaining status quo? Where's the science? Where's the data? And I'll say it outright. What data supports continuing to kill 2 bucks? I've yet to see any. And if somebody has a rational argument, I'll listen to it. So what's the danger of status quo? The Natural Resources Commission and the Department of Natural Resources have what may be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity this spring, April and May, to make a bold move for positive change. And I think that they're aware of that. And I think they're also aware of the consequences of not. Because whether you're an APR guy, whether you're an OBR guy, I think something we can all agree on is we're not happy with status quo.
Sure.
No one is happy, except maybe some of the guys in the Northwest 13. They seem to be pretty happy. But other than those guys, most of the state is not happy. And for the first time in a very long time, there's some optimism. There's some hope that change is coming, that things are going to be better. For years, people haven't even had that.
Jordan, I thank you, man. This was eye-opening for me. I will tell my audience there was a lot of head nodding, but man, you you really hit a lot of the topics where I feel a lot of people in Michigan are. And I feel like so many of us are just like, we've heard this before, so we're not going to put a whole lot of weight into it. But hearing what you had to say, hearing what you feel things are, it gives me a renewed optimism for where this state is. And like I said from the very beginning, man, I am not against growing pains, and I'm not against being proven wrong. I would love to be proven wrong on a lot of things when it comes to Michigan hunting. I'd love to see myself 5 years from now going down to Ohio for my annual January muzzleloader hunt and hearing somebody be like, oh man, I was just up in Michigan second week in November, and man, the hunting was freaking wild. I would love to hear that. It would mean so much as a Michigander. It would mean so much to the sport here in Michigan to hear somebody else not laugh at what we're doing here, but be envious of what we're doing here. And it's not going to be easy. The state of Michigan is a very, very unique state when it comes to what we've got going on from the Upper Peninsula all the way down to the very southern parts of the state. But man, for those that weren't there, if you could take this back 35 years, 40 years, there was a time where this state was an envy of other states. I'd love to see it come back to that, whether it's for big bucks or just for the opportunities. I'd love to see it all. So, any closing thoughts, Jordan, before we shut this down 4.5 hours later?
Yeah. So I'll offer 2. One, a lot of people may not understand the timeline for the deer regulations that are coming down the pipe. So I'm going to quickly synopsize that. In April, there will be a Natural Resources Commission meeting at which the department will present their recommendations and, DAT recommendations, all that kind of stuff to the commission for informational purposes. There is going to be a lot of folks at that meeting, and I want there to be more. I want no chairs available. I want standing room only. I want people out the door and down the hall waiting for their chance to speak because it's pivotal. That is information. There'll be a lot of discussion, a lot of passion. Now in May, the commission is going to vote on what regulations they're going to approve or not. But I want people to understand the time for input is April. By the time they get to the table in May, they've decided what they're going to do. The time for input is April. So if you got one shot at attending a commission meeting and you're worried about deer regulations, April is your time. Second thing I'm going to say is this. Michigan is poised for an incredible comeback story. But it's not the Natural Resources Commission, it's not the DNR, and it's not the Deer Advisory Team that holds the pen that will write that story. It's the hand of the rank and file Michigan hunter that will write that story.
If that doesn't get you fired up, I don't know what will, man. When you look at that, we got 8 weeks. 8 weeks, guys. If you wanna sit the sidelines and then bitch 2 years from now that nothing's ever gonna change, you can be that guy, or you can be that guy who's gonna say, you know what, I go to hunting camp with these same 7 guys every year, and we always talk about what we would love to see changed or what we would love to see implemented. Now's the time to go do it. I mean, it's February. I mean, this 2026 is going by so fast already. I mean, we just got a few weeks. So, guys, I encourage you, as I've said in my social media posts, as I've said in other podcasts, and as Jordan has said very eloquently throughout this podcast, get involved, get to a meeting, burn some PTO if you have to, get a carpool together, take some buddies. Whether you feel your voice is being heard or not, again, if you pack a stadium and you hear that chant and it's a unified body, it doesn't have to be the same chant. It's just a unified chant from the sportsmen that we're looking for something to happen. And don't get mad if the things you want to see aren't all the things that are happening. Don't light your hair on fire. Just trust the process, I guess. I mean, that's a hard thing to say from a Michigander who's been looking from the outside in for a long time, is trust the process. But Jordan, you've kind of rejuvenated my belief that things could change. Doesn't mean it's all going to happen in the next couple months. No, but I feel like with guys like you kind of being the spearhead for guys like me, it gives me hope that we're heading in the right direction. So I don't have anything else to add, man. We kind of covered a ton of stuff tonight, and we went a long time. So for folks that are still listening and have not fallen asleep, I appreciate you tuning in. Any last words, any links you want to add, anything else, Jordan? The floor is yours for the next 90 seconds.
Well, firstly, I just want to thank you so much, Brad, for sharing your platform with me and giving me the opportunity to fellowship with you and to share information with our listeners. And I hope that people were encouraged and uplifted. I hope they laughed, and I hope they cried both when they listened to this podcast tonight. And I guess I would just encourage people to continue to engage. It's easy to be pessimistic, and God knows if you're a Michigan hunter, you got every reason in the book for pessimism. But you only need one reason to get up, dust yourself off, and keep going. Just one reason is enough. We can spend all day coming up with reasons why not, but in the end, they're excuses. As I said earlier, we have a tremendous opportunity in front of us. It's up to us how we use that opportunity. And if any of the listeners out there want to get in touch with me, they want more information, they have questions, they want to tell me I've lost my friggin' mind, and I've done this on other podcasts, I share my home phone number. My number here at the house is 906-524-2258. It's part of my job to be publicly accessible, make myself available for questions, for comments, for feedback, and I'm more than willing to field those phone calls. Thank you again, Brad. I appreciate the opportunity.
Man, this was without a doubt, this has been my favorite podcast thus far. I love talking habitat. I love talking antlers. I love talking strategy behind hunting, but none of that matters if we don't have something to hunt. So, thank you, Jordan, for taking your time. Thank you for joining this, tiny little podcast. I know there's plenty of places where your voice could be spread much further, but it just takes that right person hearing this to make a difference. So, maybe of 1,500 people that hear this, maybe one person is like, you know what, he's right. I'm going to get off my ass and I'm going to do what I think needs to be done. Maybe we have a future NRC commissioner listening to this. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your feedback. I appreciate your realism and your honesty and your willingness to say, hey, the system isn't perfect, but we have an opportunity in front of us to take advantage of what we have now. So, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the support. And with that, folks, the episode 24, part 1 and 2 comes to a conclusion. What a fantastic conversation. So much great information, great inputs, great opinions, great outviews on life. Things that I really need to reflect on as a hunter and as a steward of the land, as we talked about. Stewardship being the key word. And I'll be the first to admit that as much as I like to believe that I have always been a good steward of the land, that episode made me realize there's a lot more I can do. And it's not just a steward of the land, but it's a stewardship of the future of the sport that I love so much. And I hope you guys took that out of it as well. Not everything in there everybody's going to agree with, and that's fine. That's the beauty of living in the world, in the country that we live in, is we have the ability to voice differing opinions. But I think at the end of the day, we can all agree on a lot of what was talked about. And even if you don't agree with some of the takes, the meaningfulness behind it was get involved. So even if you don't agree with the takes that I had or the takes that Jordan had, get involved. That's what he's encouraging folks to do. He's not encouraging folks to echo his voice. I'm not encouraging folks to echo my voice. I'm encouraging folks to get involved, as I've been doing, really since the beginning of the Wild Spirits Outdoors podcast. So once again, guys, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you guys. I love the feedback I'm getting. I love how fast this is growing. Let's keep it cranking. This is Wild Spirits Outdoors. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Wild Spirits Outdoors. We appreciate you joining us on this journey. Don't forget to like, follow, and share wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us grow the tribe and keep on chasing the wild. Stay connected with us on Facebook and Instagram at Wild Spirits Outdoors, and also on YouTube at Wild Spirits Pod. You can also head over to www.wildspiritsoutdoors.com for more content. Until next time, chase the wild, feel the spirit.